Blackout. Written and narrated by ButterflyCoffee and produced for audio by Mr Joj. It had gone on almost as long as the Great War. 1942 now. It was still raging, and there wasn't any sign of it slowing down. It seemed as though people were not looking for it to end, but only to survive till the next morning. Has the war really made people think like this? Julie thought miserably. The Black Five rattled through the countryside, the early evening light colouring everything to a pale lilac blue. It had been a long day. No sooner had she arrived into one yard with the train, she had to take an engine's place on another.
Come on, Julie, let's keep going.
The Black Five groaned, her eyelids practically creaking open. She looked down to see her fireman fitting the head code for a fast freight. She looked around to see herself stopped in a goods yard. Where the hell was she? Did you seriously fall asleep while we were moving, eh, Julie? Gordon Bennett, no wonder we didn't get a word out of you. Both the driver and fireman laughed at their engine. Julie merely rolled her eyes before giving a slight chuckle. All right then, lads, she sighed. Where are we heading off to this time? Lancaster? Derby? Saint-Nazaire?
It's this lot off to Bristol to pick up some tanks. Then it's a straight shot to Plymouth to drop off the hop.
Plymouth? Interrupted Julie in shock. You're as balmy as Churchill himself!
Come on, Julie. You've been to Western Territory before. What's the difference this time round?
What's the difference? You may as well paint me as a bloody roundel, that's the difference!
Can't exactly do much to stop it, can you?
The Black Five let out a defeated sigh. I know.
You scared?
No, I'm just fearing for my life, that's all. The driver climbed into the cab.
Well, you know what they say. Keep calm and carry on.
Julie set off smoothly, despairing at the state of everything. Was this sense of drudgery really how things were going to be? Keep calm and carry on? Make do and mend? Her crew had been talking about things over the radio and it had kept getting worse. How could one possibly keep calm when they heard of convoys not coming in? How could one carry on when demands being made of them were always climbing? The engines and crews had no rest, no easy day's work, and no sign, not even the smallest one, of anything slowing down. None of it was right. None of it was fair. When she arrived in Bristol, Julie was watered and cold before setting off again. She gave a hefty sigh at the damage she saw, trying to be cleaned and mended before the next inevitable raid. Tracks had smouldering potholes or craters beneath them. Debris was strewn in disorganised piles on the platform. It was just terrible. The night was black, with not a star or cloud in sight. Julie was uneasy. That sense of cold dread had settled in her boiler and wouldn't be shaken. It got much worse when Julie was diverted to, then stopped, at a red signal just outside Temple Coombe Station. The signalman flew down the steps to his box and hurried towards them. Signalmen didn't do that unless there was something urgent to tell the driver. Julie felt nervous.
What's the matter, mate?
Heavy bombings down here, driver, replied the signalman. I'll have to stop you until I get the all clear to proceed to Exeter St David's. Hope we don't have to wait too long, worried the fireman.
There's nothing else we can do,
sighed the driver. And so began the wait. The Black Five and her crew were held up for a good quarter of an hour before the signalman finally ordered them to move off. "Right, lads," the signalman shouted. "Road's clear. Be careful, though. Air raid warning of blue. They'll be on us any minute." In the war, signalmen were given colour codes to warn drivers about the state of an air raid. Yellow meant aircraft were at the nearest coast, blue meant they were above you, and red meant the bombs were raining down. Julie had seen the colours used a few times before, so, with a shaky whistle, she rolled out of Templecoon, expecting the worst. In spite of the hold-up, there was nothing amiss. Not that Julie could see, since it was still so pitch black. Her crew continued to toil away in the cab, which had been subjected to a heavy blackout policy. Tarpaulins blocked the light of the fire from the open windows on either side, keeping the heat in the cab. If there was any way to describe being inside a blast furnace. More dangerously, perhaps, Julie wasn't allowed to run with her lamps turned on. This was the main reason why she couldn't see very much, but she thought not having a lamp on at this pace was far more tolerable than running without them at high speeds. "Here, driver," asked the fireman, "what are we going to do if the Jerrys come over us?" The driver never responded, instead opting for turning back to the cab windows and curling his hand around the regulator. The fireman worriedly went back to shoveling. As Julie steamed past a signal box, the signalman suddenly waved something that made her boiler run icy cold. A red warning. Oh no! A low, soft drone could be heard from the blackness above. It hung in the air and shook everything around, similar to how a loose bolt rattles in its mounting. The Black Five abruptly picked up speed, almost jerking her crew off their feet.
The hell are you doing, Julie, you mad mare?
Yelled the driver.
You can't run from these swines!
Watch me! The droning became louder, more aggressive, and then the whistling started. A loud bang and bright flash suddenly engulfed the front of the train. Julie cried out, and her crew could do nothing to slow her down. Bombs began raining all over the goods train, exploding on either side. Julie was worried this might happen, but now her mind was set, both in fear and determination. She had to run away. She had to keep going. She had to get away from the awful sounds roaring all around her. Exeter St. David's was given an almighty shock as Julie tore her way through, whistle screaming and making a tremendous noise. The growl of the Germans above soon explained why, and the station master scrabbled for the telephone as bombs began to fall once more. If he could phone ahead, Newton Abbot may be able to clear a path in time. Some of the engines at the sheds were still working. Caitlin was arranging wagons and hackney yards. Joe was helping to clear the main yard of debris, and Lizzie was preparing to leave with the slow goods. All seemed as tranquil as it could be. But it wasn't for long. The night watchman burst onto the platform and hollered to Lizzie's crew. "Oi! Get out of the way! Jerry planes are after us supplies for Plymouth!" Lizzie started as her wheels struggled for grip, descending into horrible fits of coughing as she moved off. Joe was also moved, wagons and all, next to the engine shed, as the workmen dashed for the shelter at the side of the line. All was quiet for a few agonising minutes. Lizzie suddenly felt dust and soot be kicked up into her face and coughed even harder. Joe simply watched in horrified awe. He'd never seen anything like it in his life. Caitlin had heard Lizzie's nasty tyre squealing and stopped, listening and waiting with bated breath. She expected something alarming, but for Julie of all engines, with a face as white as a ghost and eyes round as saucers, to be thundering southbound like a bat out of hell, steam flying in all directions and whistle blasting over and over. Ginty watched her go, her own face paling. Oh no, not that wailing again! Caitlin then heard the droning of the planes above. The boiler went cold, and she began rattling when some of them broke formation, preparing to strike. As the workmen still ran for the shelters, she wished that the damage from this one wouldn't be so bad, and at the same time, she hoped like anything that the Black Five would turn out all right. Julie, on the other hand, was still coursing along to escape the clutches of the planes. She could see them now, hanging up there as if suspended. These great black birds were in tight clusters, swarming and snarling overhead. The Midland engine was still frightened beyond belief. The driver chanced a peek from the cab.
Hang him out!
He wheezed.
Those Jerrys aren't going for us anymore. They're flying over on top of us. It's off, Charlie. We're in the clear. Julie! Come on there. Julie, stop! Slow down!
Julie felt her tremendous pace slow, and she watched as the planes disappeared into the sky. Her senses returned to her too, and she finally gave her driver back control. The train continued onwards to Torquay, where they were halted again by a red signal. Everyone took the stop as an opportunity to catch their breath. Good grief, that was close, gasped the fireman, almost falling out the cab. I thought we'd never come out of that. It seemed to go on forever. Julie huffed shakily. Excuse me, I was out in the thick of it. Stanya forbid, if one of those bombs had gotten me, we would have all had it. Don't remind me.
Are you alright now, Julie, old thing?
Asked the driver. No, I bloody well am not. I just came out the other side of an air raid, for goodness sakes. Both engine and crew were then intercepted by the signalman, who picked his way across the line from the box. He looked grim. It's all raging in Plymouth, I'm afraid, he said. I can't let you through. You'll have to stop at Ocean Sidings. How bad is it? Julie asked worriedly. Absolutely awful, the signalman moaned, and he hurried back to his box. The driver leant on the cab wall as the fireman took his cap and angrily slapped it against his knee. Those damn Jerrys, he cursed. Those poor people, Julie hissed. Plymouth was a fairly big city where a lot of people lived. Some of them wouldn't be seeing the light of today.
I know, Julie. I know,
sighed her driver.
We still have a job that has to be done, though. We still have those men out in France to supply.
And as callous as that sounded, Julie knew that her driver was right. She could only continue to help by doing what she was doing now, even if she didn't like it. If the railway was unable to keep running, Britain wouldn't win this war. It was a sad inevitability, one which the Black Five hoped wouldn't be the case for much longer. A few hours later, the train rolled into some sidings sitting adjacent to a river. The Black Five didn't think standing idle that long would be tiring, but it was. However, she'd made it, at last. In the dim light of dawn, she could make out a thin stream of water alongside her, reaching out into the ocean. Tide must have been out. Suddenly, the very sound that had sent her flying came buzzing overhead. It seemed the Jerrys wanted another swing at Plymouth, and they were right on top of her again. The air raid sirens blared, and those big guns started shelling into the sky once more. The driver jumped from the cab.
Sod this for a laugh.
And he scrambled under Julie's tender, using it as a makeshift bomb shelter. The fireman just huddled in the cab of his engine. Julie madly hoped everyone would be okay, as the first bomb came screeching down. She could only watch crash as it tore apart a warehouse not 400 feet away. Another crashed onto a row of houses. With every explosion, they got nearer and nearer. This was it. This was how it was going to end. Another just missed the yard entrance. Finally, Julie heard a bomb coming for her. She shut her eyes tight. Louder, louder, louder! With a muffled boom, Julie found herself promptly covered in something cold, wet, and slimy. She heard her driver cry out in alarm. Through squinted eyes, she could see the enemy being sent packing by gunfire. The Black Five tried to understand what had just happened. They'd missed. The bloody Jerrys had missed! Julie wheezed a laugh despite the situation. But this was cut off when the fireman began howling himself. Oi! Julie! The fireman cried when he could breathe again. Get a load of Harry! I think you and him took the brunt of that bomb!
It ain't funny, you. This is my favourite pair of overalls, now I'm picking bloody mud crabs out of it.
It took a few moments, but the fireman managed to wipe Julie's eyes, and what she saw made her burst into fits of genuine laughter. That bomb had exploded in the riverbed beside her, sending silt and muddy sand all over herself and her driver. Serves you right. Next time you try that, driver, I'm running over your ankles.
Get off with you.
What, were you scared?
No. Just fearing for my life.
The Black Five continued laughing long after the planes had gone over the horizon, and even the crew had started yakking with her. Soon enough, another engine came along to take Julie's goods into the docks, and once Julie was rinsed off with the hose from her tender, she proceeded back to the station. The destruction and ruined buildings along the way back to the main line reminded her that there was still very much a war that needed winning, and most likely another train that needed pulling. Indeed, a load of empty coal wagons was needed at Newton Abbot, and Julie just happened to be available. She was coupled up, her crew checked her over one more time, and she set off again. Hopefully she'd be able to get a few minutes of sleep when they got up there. She and her crew desperately needed it. One thing was for certain, though. The girls were never going to believe this one.